watch this video all the way to the end so you can get all the best tips to have a wonderful YouTube sailing channel. You will learn how you can make the most money possible on patreon.com with your YouTube sailing channel. I'm Linus Wilson, and this is how to make money on Patreon with a YouTube sailing channel. And this is relevant for people that don't have sailing channels but other channels on YouTube that they would like to make money on patreon.com, the crowdfunding platform. Don't forget to watch this video all the way to the end so you can get all the best tips to make your YouTube channel a success on Patreon. I'm going to tell you how I came across this paper. I'm an academic, that's my day job, and I started a podcast and I started interviewing people, and my Facebook friends who I asked who are the most interesting sailors in the world, and they kept on mentioning people that had YouTube sailing channels. So I started interviewing people that had YouTube sailing channels, people like the crew of SV Delos, who are making about $6,000 per episode from Patreon, or the creator of White Spot Pirates is making about $800 per episode from Patreon and has about 40,000 subscribers, and the creators of Chase the Story, among many others who have very successful YouTube channels. So the biggest finding of my paper, which you'll get to hear in its entirety at the end of this video, is that people that are on Patreon produce a lot more videos than other YouTube channels producing similar content, say sailing videos, that are not on Patreon. So people that are on Patreon, they put out a lot of videos. The typical person is going to put on Patreon is going to put out a video every 8 days or 7.5 days, versus someone who's not on Patreon, they're going to put out a video every 100 days. And while you probably have heard about the big money that SV Delos and LaVagabonde have made, and LaVagabonde is getting a free boat because of their videos, those two are exceptional, and they actually are making more money than all the rest of the people, based on my estimates. That they are making probably $150,000 to $250,000 for SV Delos, and the crew of LaVagabonde is making $250,000 to $350,000 from their Patreon alone in 2016. But probably all the other sailing channels on Patreon, I identified, I believe, 76 channels in my paper. The other 74 are making less than that combined. The typical person crowdfunding on Patreon to support their videos is making $73. And the typical person on Patreon is going to have about 5,000 YouTube subscribers. So to make money on Patreon, there's not many people making very much money. I had one guest that I interviewed, and their experience confirms my experience making videos in my Around the World Vlog series. To make a minute of video that people will watch, a minute of sailing video that people will watch, you really need to put in at least an hour to expect that people are going to keep on coming back to your channel. You can't put up just one little video that's unedited, that has lots of boring stuff. You need to have quick to keep people's attention, or have some very amazing pictures or some very engaging people. So you could expect to have 3 patrons per 1,000 subscribers, or about 2 patrons per 1,000 views per video. And the typical patron will pledge about $5, $4 per person that pledges. And so that translates to about $15 per 1,000 subscribers, or about $9 per 1,000 views. So I wrote this book, How to Sail Around the World Part-Time, and in that book I told people it didn't make a lot of sense to quit your job to sail around the world. That if you're not retired, you don't have to quit your job. You can do it in 2 to 6 month increments, and it's better to take leaves of absence from your work or your business than to quit your job, because once you re-enter the workforce, it'll be very hard, and you'll probably re-enter at a much lower status job and much lower pay job. So I wrote my book Slow Boat to the Bahamas based on a sabbatical I took from my work. I'm a teacher, I'm a finance professor, and I wrote Slow Boat to the Bahamas about what I did during my last summer's break. So my advice is you're probably better off not quitting your day job. I think a lot of the misconception is that Patreon will allow you to not pay for, have your patrons pay for your sailing. That really doesn't happen. Patreon is for supporting content providers, people creating entertainment, things that people like to listen to. And some people will help you out by donating to support that, but a lot of them will expect something in return in terms of rewards, and a lot of the people that enjoy your content will not support it financially. And that's just the way of things, but you should not think of your Patreon as supporting your sailing or your lifestyle or paying for groceries, but the Patreon may eventually pay for the video production on your YouTube channel. And so if you're getting $73 per episode, if you're frugal with your video production, that might be paying for the cameras, that might be paying for the internet and the remote ports, that might be paying for things, but it probably is not even paying for that. So that's what you can expect if you start up a sailing channel. So far, I have collected $200 from my Patreon. I'm very happy with how we're doing. I think we can do better, but I've spent over $1,000 on camera gear and equipment to support the podcast and the YouTube channel that I've created. So, am I supporting my lifestyle? No, my wife is supporting my lifestyle. I'm supporting my lifestyle with my job. We both have full-time jobs. The sailboat is supported 100% by our full-time jobs. 0% by Patreon. These cameras are not even supported by Patreon yet. But that's a hope that someday they will be, and I think that's the hope that you need to have, including this tripod, if you start up a Patreon page, that it's going to support the video creation, but not very much more. And if you get to the stage where you can earn minimum wage for your editing time, you have just blown out the competition. You have done a wonderful job. I know some people that have done that, but that is not enough to sustain them. So I've interviewed several people, young people who have wildly successful YouTube channels, wildly successful Patreon campaigns, but they were making minimum wage from their video editing. That was not enough to support their groceries and pay for the repairs that they needed for their boat. So the good thing is the Patreon page doesn't take very much to set up. It's pretty easy. There's no upfront costs, and you just really have to put the link on your banner and start telling people about it. But there are a lot of people that have like zero support on Patreon, or only one supporter on Patreon, and so you shouldn't think that once you put it up it's going to be quick riches. Probably not. Your patrons want a lot of value, and you really have to have a lot of views per video to expect to have a lot of patrons. So what did I find in the paper that made people successful? One was having more views per video. That seemed to be the key statistic in people starting up a Patreon page, and certainly there's an association between having more subscribers, more views per video, and putting out more regular content and having a Patreon campaign. So, how many subscribers do you need? I don't know. I don't think there's a magic number. I would say that my experience is a little different because I also have a podcast, and my podcast is, I think, where most of the people that are supporting me on Patreon have found me, and I give them really good rewards. And that's why I get a lot of patrons, that I give them bonus content, bonus episodes every week. I give them my audiobooks. I'm also giving away a free trip on my boat in the Marquesas Islands, the most beautiful islands in the world. So there's a lot of rewards there. There are many people who will set up a Patreon page, and there's really no rewards until you really plunk down a lot of money, in which case you probably could have bought those rewards a lot easier. So some people give away t-shirts and things like that, which you could, of course, order on your own and probably save money relative to Patreon. But each creator has to think what they can afford based on their own lifestyle. But everybody on YouTube will tell you the hardest subscribers to get are your first 100. And a very large portion of my sample are people that have 100 or less subscribers. And that's not easy to build to. It's never guaranteed. There will be some people that will rocket to thousands of subscribers very quickly, and quite a lot of others who will be stuck under 100 after 10 episodes. So there's no one path to building up your subscriber base, building up your views per video. Everybody has their own journey, and you can't expect that your journey will be the journey of SV Delos and sailing LaVagabonde. A lot of camera gear goes into starting up a YouTube channel. A good camera like this can cost easily $800. A real GoPro, which I don't have, is going to cost you $400, and all the GoPro attachments are going to cost you another $100 or so. A good drone, this is not a good drone, that will actually take videos you can use in your YouTube series will cost you $1,000. Then you need mic equipment, tripods, selfie sticks, all kinds of equipment to hope to make video good enough. So I had a guest who is a professional videographer who has worked on specials on the National Geographic Channel professionally, and he said that he had destroyed $5,000 worth of equipment. since he started filming his very successful YouTube series. Other things that you may not think about is that you'll probably have to upgrade your computer. Your current computer, like mine, is probably not fast enough to edit even simple videos, let alone large videos. And you will quickly run out of hard drive space. So my guest estimated that they spent 25 hours and put in 5 hours of filming for every episode that they charge people about $200 to $300 on their Patreon. And of course they had to build to that. They were on episode 30, so they had to put out a lot more episodes, and they're making a lot more now than they were. One of the very successful people on Patreon. The typical is making a lot less than 200. Very small percentage of people on Patreon are making over $100 per episode. All right, here's some tips that are not in my paper, but I think are really essential tips for building a successful YouTube channel. And if you have a successful YouTube channel, you will get some Patreon revenues, if you ask for them. The first thing is you should edit your videos. You should make highly edited videos. Get out your editing software. There's free software on a Windows machine called Windows Movie Maker. People like the Adobe software suite, which costs a little bit more. Whatever editing software you use, I think that's fine, but it's important that you use editing software. So be sure not to upload content that will turn people away. That you want to upload consistent content. If you want to have a sailing channel, you only want to have sailing videos on there. If you're uploading things that are not relevant to sailors, not relevant to boaters, not how-to, not on the water, then it's not going to be as successful. It's going to turn people away. So you don't want to have like a beauty channel and a sailing channel, put them together. You don't want to have a gaming channel and a sailing channel together. Those are bad ideas, and that's going to turn people away. So be careful what you upload, but you also need to upload consistently. The other thing, that the features of channels that do not crowdfund on Patreon, you know, they don't do basic things right? They don't put up a banner, they don't put up a picture, they are not on any social media, or the only social media they are on is Google+. That's Sophie in the background, and this is Daly. And so you want to upload consistently. I can't produce a video a week with a full-time job, but I can produce a video a month. And so I try to film while I'm on the boat, and then produce a video a month. What are some other tips I would say? There are a lot of things you can do on your YouTube channel to make the content easier for people to find. So creating playlists, make sure that you put in keywords to your videos, make sure that you put in good titles that are interesting, but also maybe have a few keywords. So there's not a lot of room in the titles. Probably the first 60 words in the first 60 characters in the title are the most important, is what I've been told, and the last ones do not go into search. But you really want to have a catchy title, tells people what the video is about, and if it's got some keywords that help the search, that helps too. But you should put in the tags, because that is so important for your video coming up. The other big thing that everyone will tell you is that you need to have an interesting thumbnail. So you make a custom thumbnail. I don't get anything from TubeBuddy, but you can download the TubeBuddy thing, and you can They have ways to make custom thumbnails fairly quickly. You definitely want to do good thumbnails because that's what people see. And it doesn't hurt if you have cute dogs and Sophie on board to make things more interesting. And right after this, you'll get to hear my full paper, so you will know all the tips and secrets. One of the tips and secrets for doing well on Patreon is having a good Facebook profile. That was the one social media that was significant in all the regressions and all the statistical analysis that seemed to be associated with a crowdfunding channel, a Facebook presence. Google Plus is kind of dead. Instagram, I guess, is nice, but I didn't see any effect between Instagram. Twitter, I have a pretty big Twitter presence. Twitter is dominated by bots. There are not a lot of people actually on Twitter. They're almost all marketers. But on Facebook, people are on Facebook, and they're genuinely on Facebook, not to market things, but because they're interested in what's going on. And that's really the place if you want to get your YouTube channel to grow. A little bit of money goes a long way. Crowdfunding on Patreon by YouTube Sailing Channels by Linus Wilson. This study finds that YouTube channels crowdfunding on Patreon have more frequent video creation. The median YouTube channel that crowdfunded on Patreon produced a video every 7.5 days compared to 105 days for the median comparable channel that did not link to Patreon. Crowdfunders have more views per video, are more likely to link to their Facebook pages, and upload videos more frequently. While two channels in the sample each earned over $150,000 in 2016 from Patreon, the typical crowdfunding sailing channel earned $73 per video per month or creation. It appears that a little bit of money was associated with a big increase in new video production. 1. Introduction. This is the first study to look at the characteristics of crowdfunders on a relatively new but increasingly popular crowdfunding platform called Patreon. Patreon was co-founded by musician Jack Conte so he could be paid for his music videos on YouTube. Smith 2016 writes that Conte found his Google AdSense revenues were grossly insufficient to create his very popular videos. He estimated that a 1 million view video that would take $10,000 to produce would only generate $140 in AdSense revenues on YouTube. Tate 2013 writes that unlike Kickstarter, an older crowdfunding platform, Patreon funds continuously running projects such as YouTube video serials. Kickstarter campaigns are one-time projects. Financial backers on Patreon pledge to support creators per creation or a certain number of times per month. Patreon on the surface resembles a recurring payment tip jar with some blog and paywall hosting. This study takes advantage of a unique data set identified by sailingchannels.com to focus our study on a group of comparable video creators. Only 17% of these video creators link to their Patreon crowdfunding platform. The author knows of no other study to use the data from sailingchannels.com. Further, he knows of no academic study of crowdfunding on Patreon. This study finds that a typical YouTube sailing channel that crowdfunds produces a video every 8 to 61 days compared to every 105 to 212 days if it is not linking to the Patreon crowdfunding platform. These video output estimates are based on the medians of the two groups and a regression estimate. Further, YouTube channels that link to Facebook, have more views per video, and were founded more recently are more likely to crowdfund on Patreon. Most crowdfunding YouTube channels make relatively little per video, $73. But this small incentive is associated with a big increase in video output relative to comparable channels that do not crowdfund. Literature Review, Section 2. Kaufman et al. Says crowdfunding falls into two categories. First, there is crowdfunding for donations. The projects in Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and Patreon fall into this camp. The other type of crowdfunding identified by Kaufman et al. Is selling securities. The second type of crowdfunding falls under Jumpstart Our Business Startup Jobs Act Title III. Title III goes by the acronym crowdfund, capital raising online while deterring fraud, and Unethical Non-Disclosure Act of 2012. The regulatory requirements are much higher for the latter selling of securities versus the former of collecting donations. The Crowdfund Act amended the Securities Act of 1933 to make it easier for small businesses to sell debt and equity securities. There is a growing literature investigating the characteristics of successful crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter. Kickstarter is similar to Patreon because it funds creative projects. Smith 2016 reports that on Patreon, 44% of projects are videos, 18% are web comics, 13% are podcasts, and 8% are visual arts. Kupswamy and Bayos 2015 find that crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter get the most contributions at launch and near the deadline for the campaigns. Patreon has no equivalent of deadline since the projects are ongoing. Rue and Clark 2016 find that when the founder is black, crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter are significantly less likely to be fully funded. Courtney et al. Finds that influence on social media as measured by having more Facebook friends and more Facebook shares were predictors of Kickstarter projects reaching their funding goals. Similarly, here we find that linking to one's Facebook page on the YouTube banner is associated with crowdfunding on Patreon. Maram and Said 2013 find that Kickstarter projects which have more words in their descriptions and have uploaded a video raise more money. They also find past crowdfunding success of the entrepreneur is positively related to the amount of money raised. This study is unique because it looks at creators that do and do not crowdfund to discover the differences between those two groups. Much of the prior crowdfunding literature has looked at exclusively creators that are already crowdfunding. Examples of such studies are Courtney et al., Rue and Clark 2016, Kupswamy and Bayos 2015, Manning and Bejarano 2016, and Maram and Said 2013. This study takes advantage of a sample of similar video creators compiled by sailingchannels.com to look at the characteristics of social entrepreneurs who do and do not seek the support of crowdfunding. The author has not found a similar study looking at the characteristics of creators who do not crowdfund. Only looking at persons launching crowdfunding campaigns biases the sample towards a subgroup of creative entrepreneurs who think crowdfunding is profitable enough to launch a crowdfunding page. This study hopes to fill a hole in the literature with a never-been-explored data set. Section 3. Sailing Channels and YouTube Data. The list of 444 YouTube sailing channels came from sailingchannels.com. Sailingchannels.com used an algorithm to identify sailing channels. The author hand-collected the data from sailingchannels.com from all listed channels that provided subscriber information. The sample had between 1 and 251,942 subscribers with a median of 492 subscribers. The number one channel was Sailing LaVagabonde, a video log vlog about an Australian couple sailing around the world. The runner-up in terms of subscribers was the America's Cup with over 152,000 subscribers. The America's Cup website says it is the oldest trophy in international sport, predating the Olympic Games by 45 years and yachting's biggest prize. All data was collected in January 2017. Data on subscribers, views, number of videos, the date of channel founding, and the time for the last upload were all taken from sailingchannels.com. The time for the last upload was listed as the number of hours, days, months, or years from the last upload. To convert this into a number, the hours were divided by 24. Days were entered into the sample. Sailing Channels listed between 1 and 29 days in the sample. Months were converted to days by multiplying the number of months by 30 and adding 15. There were channels that had been between 1 and 12 months from the last upload. Years were converted to days by multiplying the number of years by 365 and adding 183. None of the channels sample was more than 2 years from the last upload. SailingChannels.com said at one point it removed channels that were more than 1 year from the last upload. It appears that was a one-time purge since many channels had not had an upload for over 2 years. In Table 1, Panel A, the median channel had a 75 days from the last upload with a range of hours to about 2.5 years. The author hand-collected the data on social media banner links, Vimeo banner links, PayPal banner links, or website banner links, profile pictures, banner pictures, featured channels, and Patreon banner links from YouTube. 76 channels had Patreon crowdfunding links on their banners. The median channel had 2 banner links with a range of 0 to 6 banner links. The most popular social media platform links were Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with 239, 197, 101, and 99 channels respectively linking to those platforms on their banners. To set up a YouTube channel, you have to have a Gmail and Google+ account. Google+ and Facebook are close competitors, but the former is less popular, and the Pew Research Center did not track its usage in its survey. The Pew Research Center said 68% of U.S. adults used Facebook on April 4, 2016. In contrast, 21% used Twitter, 28% used Instagram, 48.4% of sailing channels linked to their blog or website on the channel banner. Section 4, Patreon data. Details on Patreon pledges, the number and dollar amount per month or creation, were taken from Patreon.com. Patreon.com at the time of the study made creator earnings public, but in January 2017 was offering the option for creators to make their earnings private. None of the channels with Patreon links had private earnings. The author had set up a Patreon site that was charged 11% of fees. That is, 89 cents went to the creator and 11 cents of every dollar was kept by Patreon. Setting up a Patreon page was free and easy. Recurring billing, hosting of audio and pictures, and a paywall were some of the services provided by Patreon. Creators on Patreon are encouraged to set up rewards for patrons at various levels of giving and to set a threshold goals with some type of general reward when the per month or per creation goal is reached. A YouTube channel may give a channel branded coffee mug to patrons who pledge $10 per video or month. When the channel gets to a threshold goal set by the creator, for example $200 in pledges, the YouTube creator may promise to buy a new camera to improve video quality. The patron rewards and threshold gifts are open-ended and vary greatly. In the sample, there were 5,669 different pledges on Patreon, totaling $31,690 raised by YouTube sailing channels per video, other creation, or month. In January 2017, Patreon's reported pledges deducted the Patreon platform fees. Thus, patrons paid more than $31,690 per month or creation to Patreon. Patreon charged the author's Patreon page with 14 patrons fees of 11% of pledges, but creators with more pledges or creators joining Patreon early may face fees as low as 5% according to some accounts. A person could contribute to multiple creators on Patreon. The channel setup the deliverable that can be charged to patrons. 72% of the channels on Patreon charge patrons per video. The average channel linking to Patreon on their banner produced 7.9 videos per year. That would put the annual revenues from Patreon at $250,000. The number is an underestimate. The top 2 sailing channels on Patreon had weekly video release schedules and garnered almost half the per creation or per month revenues of $15,194. Thus, annual revenues, assuming 52 videos per year for those 2 channels, would be closer to $800,000. This is most surely an overestimate for those 2 channels, Sailing LaVagabonde and Sailing SV Delos, because Patreon lets patrons limit their pledges to once per month. Thus, those 2 channels could have been earning as little as 12 times the per video pledges despite producing weekly videos, or about $182,000. Sailing LaVagabonde and Sailing SV Delos were the top 2 channels with Patreon links in terms of subscribers, 251 and 151,000 subscribers respectively, and views per video, 326 and 263,000 views per video respectively. Sailing LaVagabonde and Sailing SV Delos were featured in Arnold 2017 about the top earning 35 creators on Patreon's platform. While a ranking was not given, Sailing LaVagabonde was listed 7th and Sailing SV Delos was listed 17th. Based on the pie graph in Arnold 2017, that would put Sailing LaVagabonde's Patreon revenues between $250,000 to $350,000 and Sailing SV Delos's revenues at $150,000 to $250,000. Thus, the top 2 crowdsourcing channels had 216 revenues from Patreon between $400,000 and $700,000. Compare that to Conti's estimate of $140 of AdSense revenues per million views in Smith 2016. LaVagabonde had 28.044 million views. That would put their cumulative AdSense revenues at about $4,000. Since their videos are about 4 times longer than Conti's channel, it is possible that LaVagabonde earned $16,000 from AdSense since the channel was founded, but either estimate is a small fraction of the $250,000 to $350,000 Sailing LaVagabonde earned from Patreon in 2016. The range of per month or creation pledges for the 76 channels on the site was 0 to 9,180 when the data was collected. Patreon banned creators from contributing to their campaigns. The modal contribution was $0 even when the sample is only restricted to channels with Patreon banner links. Among the 76 crowdfunding channels, the median revenues per creation or month was $73. In Table 2, we look at patronage as a ratio of the channel's popularity. The median channel on Patreon had 3 patrons per 1,000 subscribers, or 1.7 patrons per 1,000 views per video. The average were higher, with 7.2 and 4.5 patrons per 1,000 subscribers or views per video. There were only 68 channels with 1 or more pledges on Patreon because 8 channels had no patrons. Thus, our dollars pledged per patron statistics only focus on those 68 channels with pledges. The median dollars pledged per patron for the 68 channels is $4 with an average of $5.23. Compare this to the one-shot platforms such as Kickstarter, where Molick found the average pledge was $64.37. If the patrons are retained for over a year, it is conceivable that Patreon's $5.23 average pledge for a sailing channel could be more valuable. Median dollars per 1,000 subscribers or 1,000 views per video was $14.93 and $9.25, respectively. The averages were considerably higher at about $38.58 and $24.54, respectively. This skewness may have been caused by less popular channels with low numbers of subscribers and low average view counts receiving larger pledges from close friends or family. 5. Results. In the t-test table, Table 3, The author tested the means of channels that did and did not use Patreon banner links for crowdfunding. The channels linking to their Patreon crowdfunding page had significantly more subscribers, views per subscriber, views per video, banner links, and featured channels. Crowdfunding channels were significantly more likely to link to their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, PayPal, and website or blogs. In contrast, the pages that did not link to Patreon were significantly older, had significantly more days from the last upload, and were more likely to link to their Google Plus account. The author tested differences between the medians of selected variables of channels that did and did not crowdfund in Table 4. The median subscribers, views, views per video, number of banner links, and the number of featured channels were significantly higher for crowdfunding channels. The days from last upload and years from founding were significantly lower. The median channel linking to its Patreon page produced a video every 7.5 days compared to 105 to channels not crowdfunding. Thus, the crowdfunders were typically putting out over 13 times more new content compared to channels not linking to Patreon. The difference in current output, days from the last video, was even greater for the median of the samples than the averages. The average channel on Patreon in Table 3 put out a video every 46 days compared to 194 for channels not linking to Patreon. That indicates that crowdfunding channels on average put out 4 times more new videos than channels that did not crowdfund. Thus, crowdfunding was associated with a big increase in video production, whether it's measured by median or average days from the last video. The author investigated what factors were associated with the days from the most recent video. Most factors were insignificant except for 2, the number of videos and if the channel was crowdfunding. Channels with more videos uploaded more. This is not surprising. Posting more videos was the style of those channels, but one more video only decreased the expected days to the next upload by less than half a day. In contrast, crowdfunding on Patreon was associated with an expected decrease in the days from the last video over 150 days, which was statistically significant with over 99% confidence. Thus, crowdfunding on Patreon is associated with more frequent videos produced. That makes sense since Patreon rewards YouTube channels that keep producing videos. Below are the regression results for the time from the last upload. The median channel had 31 videos according to Panel A of Table 1. If a channel with 31 videos was crowdfunding with the Patreon banner link, its last upload was expected to be about 61 days or about 2 months prior. In contrast, if it did not have a Patreon link, its last upload is expected to be about 212 days or about 7 months prior, according to the ordinary least squares regression model above. Thus, crowdfunding was associated with an economically significant increase in videos produced. In Table 5, the logistic regression is used to see the factors that are associated with an increase in the propensity to crowdfund. The number of subscribers is positively related to crowdsourcing in models 1 and 2, but the subscriber numbers are insignificant when views per video is included. In all the models for which it is included, views per video is positively related to crowdfunding with over 99% confidence. The total views variable actually has either a negative or insignificant coefficient in the logistic regressions. Thus, crowdfunding channels have significantly higher number of views per video. This is not surprising. Days from the last video upload is negative and significant at the 95 or 99% confidence levels in all regressions. Channels that upload videos more frequently are more likely to crowdfund. The number of banner links is positive and significant in all regressions. Channels that use more social media seem to be more likely to crowdfund. In Model 2, Facebook is the only banner link that is not negative and significant when the number of banner links is regressed. When the number of banner links is dropped in Model 3, the Facebook dummy is the only banner link that is positive and significant. In short, channels that use Facebook are more likely to crowdfund. Channel age is negative and significant in 4 out of the 5 models for which it is included. Thus, older channels are significantly less likely to crowdfund in most specifications of the model. Conclusion: this is the first academic study of the crowdfunding platform Patreon that the author knows of. In addition, besides having a unique hand-collected data set, this paper is also rare in that it looks at the characteristics of comparable set of social entrepreneurs who do and do not decide to crowdfund. It looks at a sample of sailing channels on YouTube identified by sailingchannels.com as producing similar content. This study finds that more popular channels with more views per video, channels linking to their Facebook pages, and channels more recently founded are more likely to crowdfund on Patreon. While two channels are well compensated from their Patreon campaigns, they are paid collectively over $15,000 per video or month. Most other crowdfunding channels make modest amounts. The median crowdfunding sailing channel only earns $73 per month or video. Despite these relatively low rewards, crowdfunding is associated with a great increase in YouTube video production. The average crowdfunding channel produces 4 times more videos than channels that do not link to the Patreon platform on their YouTube banners. Thus, it is possible in an increasingly fractured media environment where most content is free, donation crowdfunding may be able to help alleviate the free rider problem. Patreon gives content producers some incentives to produce regular content, and many of the YouTube channels may be responding to those modest incentives. Okay, so what are you going to tell them?
Like.
Yeah, give us a like, thumbs up, and subscribe.
Subscribe.
And share.
And share.
And comment down below.
And comment down below.
Tell me what I could have done better with this video. What could I do better? What do you think makes a great YouTube channel? What do you think is important in a good sailing video? And do you think Daly needs a haircut?